trout will pick an area that's suitable for them, and they do like big circles. That's a good one. A decent one. Get you the net. Got it. He's chunky. Nice. Mahi. Yeah. Yep. Freaking floats good too.
Yeah, no, they definitely float.
Mm-hmm. On that old bait and weight. Couldn't stand it. Come here, stupid.
Yeah, no, I super practice float.
Yeah, it's funny. I was water testing it. It looks like it's sitting on wood. It doesn't even go in the water.
Yeah, no, yeah. There's a lot of overkill. Just to make sure.
Yeah. Yeah, he's all fired up. There we go. Yay. Oh, looks like I lipped him too. All right, ladies and gents, want to take a quick break from the action to show you what's going on out there. As always, I'll start with the rods and reels I'm using out there. This here is the rod I use for throwing mini jigs and drop shot and really spoons, any moving baits. This is a Katana custom rod. It's a moderate fast action, which means it's got a kind of a soft tip but a stiff backbone. Moderate is typically a real soft wavy tip, and fast is typically a stiffer tip, but this one's kind of in the middle. And for a reel, I have on here a Shimano Vanquish SSSP 1000. And for line, I use Sinister Strand Premium Fiber Braid in 4-pound, and then I run that up to a 4-pound leader of Sinister Fluorocarbon and tie it off with a double uni knot. Now, the only difference with this Katana and the other Katana I have, the rod blank and the guides and everything's just the same. This one's one of the new split grips. And really this comes down to personal preference. If you want a split grip or if you want the Tennessee handle like my other rod that you've seen on the show. It's just a hair lighter. Some guys like the feel of split grips better than the Tennessee. I like it better for throwing mini jigs and more active moving baits, and I use the other Katana with the Tennessee handle for my drop shot presentations and spoons. But totally up to you. Each rod performs exactly the same as far as working your baits back and all those things. It just comes down to preference. Some guys like split grips, some guys like the Tennessee handle, so the folks over at Katana decided to make both so you can have your choice of which ones you want. Now the next rod is the bait and weight rod I typically use. This is an 8-foot Daiwa Spinmatic rod. It's a real moderate rod, so it means the tip has a lot of whip to it. But when you're looking at bait and weight rods, that kind of thing doesn't really matter because you're not working baits back actively. It's just kind of something if you like the feel of the rod. You think it'll cast good, then great, get it. This one's an 8-foot, obviously ultralight, but as I'll show later in the video, typically fishing for trout in Southern California, you don't have to cast very far. Usually I do an underhand cast, and I'll show you that in a little bit. For a reel, I have a Daiwa Legalis 1000 on here. Really nice reels, and they're relatively inexpensive for the way the reel is put together and manufactured. Really solid reel. In fact, I've done videos on these back in the day for using for mini jigs or drop shot. I really have always liked the Legalis, and I'm fortunate enough to have a couple of them, so I use them on my bait and weight setups, and they work just great. Now let's go to the bench, and I'll show you some of the rigs I was using out there, because there were several different types, and the baits that were working the best that day. All right, guys, what seemed to be working best for Esteban out there was mini jigs, but a mini jig fished very close to the bottom, if not right on the bottom, without getting it stuck in the mud. And the jig he was using was this one. This is Black Galaxy. It's a newer one. This used to be in just solely minnow form, but he made it into a mini jig, and really good color. And it's got, you see, it's got the silver and the red flakes. Something about that really excites the trout. I used to do really well with the, and still do, the Black Galaxy Spartan minnow. But the interesting thing was we started fishing this color fairly early in the day, and usually your dark colors are more better designed or better apt to get fish later in the day when the sun's real high. But for whatever reason, like I said, sometimes the fish decide what they want when they want, and they wanted a real dark color right from the get-go. So he was doing real well with this on a 32nd ounce lead head and fishing it real close to the bottom. And the fish weren't on fire for it, but he was getting consistent fish, which you'll see later in the video. At one point he really started putting on a show. So this one was working real good. You also see later in the video, I was doing some drop shot, and I was hooking up on this inchworm. And this is another one by Golden State. This is a bubblegum inchworm. And it's white and pink, obviously like bubblegum. And the way you hook these on is you have your number 8 mosquito hook, or this happens to be a number 10, but you can use either. And the way I like to hook them on is to start at the widest part and just slide it on until it starts to bend around the hook, and then just pop that hook through so it sits nice and straight just like that. And then I work it back on the drop shot. And the benefit of putting this worm all the way up to the eye of the hook is if you ever feel something on the end of your line and not sure if you got bit or you missed a fish, when you bring it back in, if it was a fish, the worm will come back looking like that, like it's half pulled off the hook and there's no moss or weeds on it. 9 times out of 10, that was a bite. So it helps you clue in onto exactly how the fish are biting that day. And if you're actually feeling fish biting, because sometimes they bite really subtly, and that's how it's going to be that day. So you know to really, every time you feel any little thing, you may want to give it a quarter hook set. Now the biggest thing I wanted to talk about was my bait and weight setup. And the way I usually rig my my bait and weight setups is I'll do a simple Carolina rig. And on here I have a 1/4 ounce egg sinker, a Carolina keeper. I usually do about a 12 to a 14 inch leader to start. You can lengthen it or shorten it. Like if the water's extra murky, sometimes I'll go with a really short, like a 6 or 8 inch leader. But typically I'll use the 12 to 14. I don't measure it out. I just kind of eyeball it. And that usually works just fine. Because like I said earlier, is the fish usually, especially the trout, are going to be in close. So you usually don't have to use a longer leader. There's very rare circumstances where you do, but I'll get into that in another video. And then I run that up to a number 10 owner mosquito hook. And that usually is plenty for all my bait presentations. Sometimes if I use power bait, sometimes I may go to a like size 18 treble hook. But I really like the mosquito hooks because it's a lot easier on the fish sometimes. And they're easier to get out, whether you're keeping them or trying to release them. Now for bait, I was using these new devil tails, and the devil tails have been around for a little while, But Esteban decided to change them up a little bit and made them all floating. So now they're good for bait presentations, and they have scent. I don't know what the scent is. That's a trade secret, but there's scent in here, and they come ready to go. And these things float really, really well. I haven't tried a number 8 mosquito hook yet, but they definitely float a 10 real well. And I'll show you how I rigged these up. The best way I've found is to start at the top, the very top of the devil tail in the fattest part, and I pick one side and I push the hook through and start to let it go around the bend, and then I kick out the side and bury the eye of the hook into the bait so there's maximum hook sticking out. So it's gonna float basically like that, because typically what's gonna happen is your trout are gonna attack the head, so they're gonna get all hook. And I found this is the best way to ensure hookups and you don't miss a lot of bites. All right, now I wanted to talk to you guys real quick about bait and weight fishing, especially in Southern California. But this really applies to just about any lake you're gonna go to, as long as it's not a super deep water lake with steep drop-offs. But those are pretty rare out here. But the biggest thing, or the biggest mistake a lot of guys make when they're trout fishing is they think that the trout are gonna be out deeper because they're a cold water fish, so they're gonna wanna get to that colder water. And that's just not totally accurate. What happens is, whether it's warmer out or ice cold out, in the deeper water it is colder, but what happens is there's usually less oxygen the deeper you go, and trout are very delicate as far as the conditions that they like. So if they go out deeper, they usually do what's called suspending. And basically what they do is it's almost like drawing, if the bottom of the lake's like this and this is the top, it's like drawing an imaginary line where the oxygen content and the water temperature is the best for them. And they will follow that line out further from the shore, because obviously in shallower water, when it gets warm, the water gets warmer. So they'll go out a little bit further, but they don't necessarily go out deeper. So typically you got to use something called slip bobbers and that kind of thing to reach them when they're like this. But during the heart of the SoCal season, it's cold and the trout are going to be in close. And what they do is they don't really set up on a spot. And that's why I get a lot of comments from guys about using fish finders on the kayak and all that. They're not like bass, where bass like structure and certain things to hide under. Trout will pick an area that's suitable for them, and they do like big circles in that area, and they kind of stay in the area, like say in a cove. They'll stay in the cove, but they don't sit still. They're kind of like sharks. They just keep swimming, and they do these big circles in that area. And what happens is a lot of guys, what they'll do when they're bait fishing is they throw way out as far as they can, even in some of these shallower water lakes in Southern California. But when you go out that far, typically there's not a lot of fish out there, especially trout. You're almost fishing for catfish at that point. The trout usually stay just a few feet offshore, and there's something that I like to call the curtain. And what the curtain is whenever you're at the lake and you can see into the water a little bit, you know, you can see a few feet out and then it gets dark. You can't see anymore. Well, that's what I call the curtain. So what I always tell guys is just do a light cast a few feet beyond the curtain. And the problem with that is a lot of guys don't believe that the fish are that close because they can't see them, but they're there. And as you can see in this clip, I'll show you exactly how I cast out. And you can see I'm just doing an underhand cast and throwing it a few feet out, and that's where I caught that fish. And that's typically where I catch a lot of the trout when I'm using bait, is very, very close. There are very rare circumstances where throwing out deep will get the trout. And it's not necessarily deep water. Like I can think of one place off the top of my head at Gregory, Lake Gregory, right off the old baseball field. There's a cove there, but the cove is really shallow. Or another place is Lake Hemet. Hemet is really shallow lake in the front part. In the back by the dam, it's deeper, but in the front, it's fairly shallow. So sometimes you can cast it way out there and the water depth doesn't really change much, and you may find the trout out there. But like I said, that's a very rare circumstance. And even at Hemet and even at Gregory, I always try in close first. But 90% of the time, and I would say a hard 90% of the time, your trout are going to be up close to the shore. So next time you're at the lake and you're bait fishing, whether it's your Parado, Hesperia, St. Anne River Lakes, wherever, try throwing one rod out deep and try throwing one rod real shallow, just beyond the curtain, like I told you, and see which one gets hit first. And I'll bet you it's going to be the shallow one. So let's get back to the video and see how the rest of the day shook out. All right, ladies and gents, there you have it. Always good times out at Hesperia, but I tend to struggle the first part of the SoCal season. I really think it's because during the month of December and late November, the weather is extremely unstable as far as heat and cold. And it's cold one day, hot the next, and the fish turn on and turn off. And I tend to have a lot of real good days and then skunk days. So if you're experiencing that, don't worry about it. Usually, for me, the SoCal season really kicks off after January. That's usually when the weather kind of stabilizes. We get some good cold weather for a while, and the trout really start to settle in and start doing their normal things. But on this day, as you can see, it was a variety of techniques that we were using, and that's all you guys need to do is try and master as many of these techniques as possible, or at least try them, and that'll just get you on more fish. It just will, because as you saw, the mini jigs were probably working the best, but Dropshot was in there, and good old bait and weight was in there. So you never know what they're going to want, and you can go to a lake knowing all the colors that worked that last time and baits. And as soon as you get there and throw out and you're fishing there for a while and you aren't getting a dang thing until you change the color or change the presentation and discover that they want something completely different that day. But that's just fishing, so don't stick to what worked last time every time. Be willing to try new things, and the more new things you try, the more experimenting you do, the more fish you're gonna catch. I absolutely guarantee it. And with that, if you want any of the fine products I use on this channel, there's a QR code right up here. If you want to check out the Katana rods, the Golden State Fishing custom baits, the Waterland sunglasses, or any of the other products that I use and are on this link tree, you can click on this QR code. It'll take you to the link tree. It has discount codes either in the website URL, or the codes will be listed, and you can get discounts up to 15% off on some of the products and companies. And they're really, really good products, or I wouldn't use them on this channel, and I certainly wouldn't recommend them to you. So go check them out. As always, if you like what you saw here, give us a like and a subscribe. Really helps out the channel. If you didn't, I appreciate you watching as long as you did. Coming up, I'm going to be local for a while. I went up to Pyramid, did really well up there, so that video is coming out in the next couple weeks. But I'm going to be doing a lot of SoCal fishing, at least through February. I don't think I have my next trip scheduled till March. So I will be local, hitting St. Anne River Lakes, all the county lakes. Want to hit Parado real hard, some more Hesperia, maybe even go up to the mountains if there's not a lot of ice. and we'll see what we can do, and a lot more bait and weight fishing. I'll be doing that. So if you have any questions or comments, please leave them here. You can also hit me up on my Instagram at Spanker Outdoors and leave me a message there. And with that, hope to see you guys out there, and tight lines.